Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Meme Team podcast, where we talk about the logic behind virality, because marketing isn't just logic, it's culture, and our podcast decodes both. We're welcoming this week Kaleigh Moore, a freelance GEO, AEO content writer for SaaS companies and retail contributor at Forbes. Welcome, Kaleigh.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So wanted to touch a bit on a couple topics from last week. Talking about Timothee's merch pop-up in New York this past week, where they sold finally the jackets and like the whole tracksuits, and there were like little magnets and stickers and stuff. But the big thing was that they were selling the jackets for $250 and they sold out in 15 minutes, which is kind of wild to think about. But also just kind of shows that like the marketing is working, at least for the merch. Part of what I had been saying last week is that what Timothée is trying to do is create a moment where it's like less about the movie and like promoting the movie about, you know, a big dreamer that's like playing ping pong and like, you know, puts it all in to like win, gives up relationships and all that, but more about like participating in a cultural moment where you wear the tracksuits, you know, see the blimp, you see the ping pong like truck driving around New York, and like you post photos about that. And this is pretty much showing that it's like working, that people want to like culturally participate in the moment. Did you see that, Kaleigh?
I did, and I saw the Zoom. The Zoom is the most brilliant piece of it for me, because when I started watching it, I remember feeling like, what is this? Am
Yeah.
I supposed to see this?
Yeah.
And I feel like the fact that they were able to achieve that is something very delicious and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. My big thing is like, I knew it was like, you know, fake, because it's like, who's going to put this out?
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize was that like they would actually put some of the ideas, you know, out there, right? Like the blimp and the
Yeah.
Wheaties box. So once that started happening, I was like, whoa, wait, you're actually putting budget behind the ideas? Like, and I thought
Yeah.
it was so novel, because it's like, not only playing on his persona of wanting to be a great and like win the awards and, you know, do all
Mhm.
that, but then going so like into the absurd that it's like he can't
Yes.
possibly be this deranged, you know? But then it's like, wait, they actually did the blip though, you know? So I
Yeah.
think that was what works for me.
Yeah, I just thought it was very interesting, very unique, and I was looking on Twitter and I saw what you said about like he's really building a brand for himself in
Hmm.
these kind of offbeat initiatives too, which I
Hmm.
think is so smart.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be a change in how movies get promoted going forward. I'm looking forward to your example about the Hunger Games, which I think is doing a
Hmm.
different type of marketing.
Yeah.
That's not involving the stars necessarily, the way Timothy is being involved, but it's definitely movie studios, movie stars, and the people behind the movies are having to come up with new ways to promote movies and get those butts in like theaters, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he's going this route and being like, I'm gonna own this and like be the face of it, and it's working.
Yeah. Very creative. I
um,
like it a lot.
yeah. Somebody that's starting to do a little bit more marketing is Apple TV with
Mm.
Pluribus, which is kind of taking over my Twitter anyway, like who's, you know, watching it. And one of the things that we've talked about here before is that Apple doesn't really market their TV shows well enough or early enough, right? Like even the biggest example that we give is Severance, where they did
Mm.
the, you know, experiential marketing experience at Grand Central with like the cast inside like the glass box at their desks. But that was like season 3, you know,
Hmm.
like it wasn't
Late.
even season 1. So it took that long for them to put money behind it, which is kind of wild if you think about it, right? And what's wild about this one is like Pluribus, it's like Vince Gilligan, that's, you know, Breaking Bad and
Hmm.
Better Call Saul, like that creator. So you know that people are going to be interested just based on the name alone. So the fact that they didn't put that much behind it, I have heard that they put Amazon ads out there, so at least I guess they're doing that, which is weird.
Okay.
And then obviously they have within their own Apple TV system, the trailers and, you know, pushing it for you to watch, but certainly nothing outside of that, right?
Yeah.
And this week they posted the this bit on Twitter saying like, "Hey Carol, we'll be seeing you a little bit earlier than normal this week. Looking forward to Wednesday." Basically, you know, notifying everybody that the show is coming out on Wednesday as opposed to Thursday when it usually comes out because of the holiday. Um, but I thought it was, like, interesting because it's like, oh, just the typeset on the yellow background, and just kind of leaving it at that, and, like,
Yeah.
letting the word of mouth kind of spread from that. Have you watched the show, Kaylee?
I have watched it and I'm obsessed with it.
Really? Okay.
I love it so much. I heard about it in class from another classmate
Mhm,
and he was just raving about how good it is.
mhm.
I like it very much. It definitely has that Breaking Bad, keeps you guessing, you're slowly getting information drip. So I'm a big fan. No spoilers, but I like it. I like it a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, we haven't started watching it yet, but it's the next one on my list. We're waiting for a couple of like episodes to kind of build up
Yeah.
so we can binge watch it a little bit more. But
Same.
yeah, I don't think I've heard anybody speak badly about it so far, which is amazing. And we're
Yeah.
looking for a new like tentpole show.
Yeah. It's very good. It's a thinker. It's a thinker. It's
Hmm.
like lots of good discussion after you watch it. You're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I
Love
hope
that.
they tap into that with the marketing too.
Uh-huh.
There's just so much fodder here for interesting stuff they could do. But anyways, not my job.
Yeah, maybe next season.
Yeah, maybe
Hopefully
season 3, who knows? Who
yeah,
knows?
right. Hopefully they don't wait that long. Because it does take a while for it to reach the normies. Obviously
Mhm.
those of us that are supremely online kind of get it a bit more.
Yeah.
But I do think it takes a little bit more to get more people to, be watching it or to pay attention or to even know that it
Yeah.
exists, because Apple TV isn't really I mean it's not really competing with Netflix or Disney. And then obviously it doesn't compete with cable TV, like regular
Right.
TV. So
Yeah.
we'll see what they do next year.
Yep. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about a TV and streaming platform that's actually doing really well in terms of their marketing. So Hulu placed QR code stickers on apples in grocery stores promoting Abbott Elementary, a show about teachers. And this is after this latest season, the teaser was all about like throwing apples at the teacher. Apples are obviously culturally known as being about teachers, and so they've been using the apples that people have at the grocery store in order to get people to organically come and watch the show. And I thought it was like really interesting because it's like people are actually posting photos of like the apples themselves, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And I thought it was like a new way of doing like a promo tour, right? Like I don't think I've ever heard of another show or TV studio doing grocery store marketing like this where it's like you're
Yeah.
using actual apples to like promote the show. So it like is integrating into people's regular lives of just they're just going grocery shopping and being reminded, hey, the show Apple Elementary is like back on. And I
Yeah.
like that it's like falling back on Hulu because obviously this is an ABC show, but Hulu is
Mm.
kind of taking that and promoting it because they have the streaming rights to it after it, um, premieres live on ABC, then it goes on to like Hulu. So Hulu's kind of like owning, like, hey, like come watch the show afterwards, knowing that most people
Yeah.
probably aren't watching it when it comes out. Um, but I like that it's using a physical product as like media in order to get people to, recognize, oh, yeah, like this show and to pay attention to something else. We're used to seeing billboards, we're used to seeing like, TV ads, we're used to seeing, ads on like social media. So the fact that it's like a physical item just really, stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think for me, like coming from the world of software, that feels very like surprise and delight. It's
yeah.
such an unexpected moment where you're doing something very mundane, you're shopping for groceries, and you stumble upon this little wink.
Hmm.
And I love a secret handshake moment as well. Any brand that can make somebody feel like they're part of the insider club of like, if you know, you know.
Hmm.
I love that, and the Apple thing is just such an interesting way to do that. Very, creative to think of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The reason this came across, to me, someone showed me the LinkedIn, and they're like, the person who came up with this idea deserves to get like a raise, and it's like one of those
Yeah,
moments of like really giving props to the people that are like trying to think outside the box, where it's like we're so used to seeing ads everywhere. I can see the downside of that where it's like, ugh, even now, like my produce now has ads. But I think
true.
for now, it's like such a novel idea that it's like, okay, like I'll allow it,
Yeah.
But I'm sure
And
once we reach, the third show doing it, people are like, ugh,
yeah,
don't.
and that's the thing, it's "Oh, this is the first time I've encountered something
Hmm.
like this," so it's like the early person advantage.
Yeah.
And I think people are gonna have to innovate and come up with new ways to do stuff like this, so ag this is the first-timer experience. I'm sure there have been other things like this, maybe I missed them even being
Hmm.
terminally online, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
I think like that's a big thing now that we're starting to see with like communities where you're having like levels to things where it's like you
Mhm.
don't have to pay attention to everything, but the more that you see things across the board, like you feel as if you're like a part of the smaller group. So it's kind of like insider like knowledge. And the whole
Yeah,
just like Easter egg thing has just kind of grown. I mean, the whole, Timothy Chalamet thing, a lot of
yeah,
that is like kind of translating the Easter eggs for like him and his brand. So I think that that's a thing that they found here to do
yeah,
with like the apples.
yeah, I love it. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, that just reminds me of, all these other like marketing, like the experiential marketing that we're seeing right now, where it's
Mhm.
like, well, that's one thing, right? Like the pop-ups that we're seeing of like basically all the AI companies, right? We have Claude. I mean, Meta just
Oh,
launched
yeah.
theirs. The doing the experiential marketing, like like I mentioned earlier with Severance, but we just saw
Mhm.
Ramp do it. So that was like a
Yep.
new turn on that because it's like no fintech company had done that, and they were kind of putting it on its head by bringing in, as their CFO, the accountant from The Office, Kevin Baumgartner.
Mhm.
So that was like the spin on that. The fact that it was like not just novel to ramp, but just like fintech as an industry, where it's like most of the
Yeah.
ads that get out there are like really boring. There's no like excitement to them. Um, so that, that was one thing, and then the other thing was, where almost every tech startup, new one that's coming out, has done, like, the launch videos, right? Where it's like when it
Oh,
was the first
yes.
couple, brands that did it was like, "Yes, amazing, like, do it." Now that we're starting to see that every company is doing it, people are like, "Ugh, is this really necessary? Is this, like, you're just jumping in on the trend?" So these are those things that's like, there's like a fine line to walk between like coming up with an idea, or like, using somebody else's idea, but then spinning it and doing it for yourself in a way that like makes sense for you and not just jumping
Mhm.
in on the trend. So that's a thing
Yeah.
I think for marketers to think about, where it's like, does this actually make sense for our brand to do, or are we just jumping in on the trend, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't really make sense for your brand to be chasing a hype video or something that's trendy, because it doesn't make sense for your brand. So for marketers, like, think about that. Think about how your brand plays into this and how you can make it fit your brand. And that's what I think the brilliance here was with Abbott Elementary, was that it's an apple, right? It's not another vegetable.
Yeah.
It's not another like product in the grocery aisle. It's an apple that fits the teachers and fits like what they were trying to do. And they were able to fit it into the teaser that announced that they were coming back in August, right? So my thinking is like,
Oh.
did this come out, like, was this an idea that was created from August, that like this season we're just gonna talk about apples and put that into all our marketing, or did that come after? Right? Like at what point did this
Yeah.
idea come? Like I would love to know like from like their team when it kind of came up and what
Yeah.
like the thought process behind it was.
Yes. So that kind of leads nicely into one that I was thinking of as well, which I think you tweeted about. It's the fan casting
Mhm.
of Elle Fanning. Elle Fanning? Yeah.
Yes.
I always
Hmm.
get the Fannings mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay. Elle Fanning for Effie Trinket in the upcoming Hunger Games movie that Lionsgate is doing. So she will be the younger version of Elizabeth Banks' character. And she gave an interview recently to MTV where she was saying that she feels that she was cast because online the fans were just hounding Lionsgate that they really wanted her to be in this role. And I think the fact that Lionsgate capitalized on this and went with the fan suggestion is a really smart and strategic move that I wish more media companies, publishing houses, all of that would lean into, because give the people what they want. If you have people telling you what they want to see on the screen through the vehicle of social media, where it's a two-way conversation now. This is not just production companies passing down what they want to see. If you can make it a more of a two-way street, a two-way conversation, Why not? Give people a reason to go to the movie theater, to not wait till the more convenient option, the cheaper option of streaming it at home. Um, this just seems like a dumb move to me. So I'm curious what your thoughts on it are, because they didn't have to listen, right? It's
Mhm.
not a choice not to make. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, as you have a personal connection to
Yeah.
this series as well.
The personal connection is that it was a first date my husband and I had. We went to the original Hunger Games as our like first date. So that the books and like the movies all are just like
Yeah.
are pretty they have sentimental value to me and us. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like the Hunger Games, and this is actually one of the like examples we've talked about it before when they started doing the rollout of the original um cast that they were putting out. That I love that they were slow rolling their announcements, that it wasn't like, oh, here we're announcing everybody, right? It's like, no, they
Yeah.
were creating individual videos for each of the cast members, starting off with some of the smaller ones, and then laying out some of like the big ones. But Effie Trinket was one of the ones that took a while, right? And then as the process was like rolling up, I was paying attention to the conversation happening with, surrounding Elle Fanning, and I was like, actually, she would be, a great one. And a lot of what was going on there was just seeing that like they would put just photos of her wearing like the some
Well,
outlandish outfits, saying that she would be a great vehicle for the movie promo like red carpet tour, because like
yeah.
the outfits that she would be wearing would be amazing. Um the fact that she was a good actress at the time, she was working on The Great, which kind of like fits, similar vibes to the movie, or like
Yeah.
to the role.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot kind of going in that direction. And there wasn't anybody else that was really coming up as like a suggestion, which I thought was interesting, right? Because I've seen before where I mean, we see it with James Bond, right? Like there's
Mm.
lots of fan casting options there. We've heard, Idris Elba. We've heard, I think Henry Cavill the first time around. Now I think he's aged out. The latest one is Aaron Taylor Johnson, right? So there's a lot
Mm.
of, options there, which I think makes it harder for, the James Bond people to come around, because at that point it's like, who do you choose, right? Like, do you
Right.
try to figure out who's the most popular, or like who's the best actor? So in general, I like the principle, and I like that they did it for this instance. I think each instance it has to like make sense for that.
Yeah.
One argument I've seen that I do kind of agree with is the whole idea that like usually with these types of movies, you want to get somebody that isn't well known, right? Like the original Hunger
Mm.
Games with Jennifer Lawrence. Like at the
Right.
time, she wasn't that well known. She was like an indie star that had only been in like Winter's Bone.
Mhm.
And this was kind of like her launch pad, right? Similar with Twilight, right? Kristen Stewart had been known a little bit more, but Robert Pattinson, right? Like really had it.
Right.
And that's kind of was a star making vehicle for them. And if now we're just kind of casting, people that are well known, like, are we not giving people that opportunity? I saw that
Yeah.
most recently with the Beatles, casting,
Oh,
where it's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
all these are like well known guys. Like, why wouldn't you, choose people that are less well known, that look more like the characters, Or I mean, they're not characters. I mean, they're like the
Yeah.
real
The
Beatles,
people.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I wonder if you've seen those arguments or whether that makes you think
Yeah, I
differently.
certainly have, and I think for bigger characters in a series like that, I totally get it. You don't want to alienate people who have their own reasons and choices for wanting those kind of main character roles to be very specific people, especially in the
Mhm,
James Bond case. But I think for this one, where it's kind of a more of a side character, it's a great way to capitalize on the buzz around it, and
mhm.
I think again, I think this speaks to the larger trend of just capitalizing on fandoms. I mean, think about all the movies that come from books these days. There are
Mhm.
sites devoted just to fan casting, and for people who like me, who when they read a book can't put a face to a character, I always have to go look it up, and I love to see who people pick for these
Mhm.
different characters and books that I read, and so much IP is coming from books and series like this today. So
Mhm.
I think for the people who are already invested, who've already thought about it, who like want to see someone specific on screen, this is a strategic play at fandom
Mhm.
for these companies. And I think that as it becomes harder and harder for people to, like you said, butts in seats, get them to the concert, get them to the movie theater, you gotta give them a reason to be there because it's way more convenient to just watch it at home or wait till later.
Mhm.
And these are kind of industries that are struggling right now. So I feel like the fandom angle is a unique approach to how do we how do we shift? How do
Mhm.
we do this more strategically?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's ways to like do both, and I think they really actually did
Yeah.
that for this movie. The main actors are not well known. Sorry, so
Mhm.
for Sunrise at the Reaping, it's the story of Haymitch and his Hunger Games. So the Haymitch character is brand new, Lenore as well. Maisie is also like new. So all like the kids are generally like new. Um, this one, Elle Fanning is playing a character that we already knew. So I think it makes
Mhm.
sense. For that. One thing I really liked about this, I don't know if you saw, was that Elizabeth Banks congratulated Elle Fanning and like sent her a
Smart.
personal message saying like, welcome, you're gonna love the character, you're gonna do great, which I thought was
Yeah.
also really like good marketing because it's like you're
Mhm.
involving, previous cast members and you're making it seem as if they're all like buddy buddy and like friendly. Um, and that adds to like the allure, I think.
Yeah.
I also think that you're right in saying getting people involved and like making them feel as if they're part of the process gets their buy-in a little bit more
Yeah.
of like, oh, that's exactly who I was thinking should be this, or like I came around and like I learned this person. I totally agree that that's who it should be. Um, so I think that that's like a great way to continue
Yeah.
involving, people. And I think we probably are going to start seeing more of that. Fan casting is not going away. It's like one of the most popular ways that like people kind of join a community and become part of a community. It's like kind of
Mhm.
having those like debates about like who would be the best, person for that role. One other thing I wanted to shout out here was the fact that I'm not surprised it's Lionsgate, which recently we
Mm.
talked about. They just hired a bunch of creators from TikTok to start creating fan cam views for their own like in-house Lionsgate TikTok, because they're seeing that those like
Oh.
creators are bringing in people and that they're like the highest rated, like even over their own content. So that's showing that they have their like, finger on the pulse of what's happening with like the movies in their space, right?
Yeah.
They're bringing in people that they know can like promote their movies in a way that's popular right now, right? Like fan cams are super popular in terms of like how content is being created. And this is like one of those things that I've talked about repeatedly here where it's like I'm surprised that some of the studios aren't like trying to capitalize on that. So
Yeah.
when they did that, I was like, of course, like finally somebody did it. Um, we previously, actually, I think the same week that we talked about that, I talked about how Warner Brothers goes after people for their IP, right? Like the
Right.
week that the Paul Thomas Anderson movie came out, one thing after another, someone posted a like clip about Leonardo DiCaprio doing like the Mexican whistle,
Right.
which went viral. I think it was 3 times over because there was 3 different viral tweets that that came out on Twitter, and WB had them taken down for IP, for copyright issues.
Oh,
And I'm just
interesting.
like, you're trying to get people to come watch the movie. Why would you take it down? It was literally like a 15-second clip, like
Yeah.
fine. Yes, technically it's your copyright and your IP, whatever. But like, if you're trying to get people to get interested in going to see the movie, then you have to let them create the types of like fan art that will get people to notice that your movie is out. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, and actually, recently Netflix has also started giving people the tools to be able to create those snippets because they previously were also taking that down. So they
Oh,
finally just realized, like, wow, we're getting people to like watch our shows because fan cams are out there and like showing the different relationships, right? Like, how many times did I see The Summer I Became Pretty or something?
Am I Turned Pretty?
The Summer I Turned Pretty, yes.
Yeah.
I saw, like, so many of those. It didn't get me to watch the show. It did get me to learn everything about it, though.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so,
of course.
I really think that it's like involving your community and allowing them to participate with you is one of the best ways to get people to watch your show because they learn about it and they learn that there is a community and that you can join and be a part of them. So
Yeah.
smart of them.
The the final marketing takeaway I will say about that is as media properties become more fan associated, I feel like this is a really strategic avenue for merchandising as well.
Mm,
So production houses like Shondaland that has Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton, they are getting into fan experiences. They did a branded cruise. They have a whole line of scrubs because that's the Grey's Anatomy's
hmm
and very strategic tie in there. And so they have been very thoughtful and deliberate about, again, what's a new touch point where we can diversify income streams around these media properties, but also just build deeper connections through other avenues. And so I think, again, leaning into fandom, leaning into what does your audience want? What do they care about? What are things that would help make this relationship a little bit stickier? I feel like it's going to be the future. The next wave of social media gave the audience a voice. Now, what do we do with it? And
hmm
so merchandise just makes so much sense.
We're seeing that with Timothy Chalamet and the Marty Supreme
Exactly.
tour,
Same
right?
thing.
Like
Same thing.
the people showed up, but they bought everything. Now I think, they're gonna do a digital experience and have that online. I assume it's gonna come out,
Mhm.
within like the next week,
Yeah.
in order to have like the tie-in for like the movie to come out on Christmas Day. So
Yep.
imagine, you're a fan, you get your family to buy you the jacket because it's like
Yeah.
Christmas. It's a easy way to spend $250, and then going to the movie with your family on Christmas Day. So I
Yep.
totally agree. For Bridgerton, I see that they've done like balls, actual like balls, where
Yes.
it's like people dress up and like go to them.
Yep.
Some of them have been more like fire festival balls,
Mhm.
where it's like nobody showed up or it was like fake. It wasn't like Shondaland. As companies start doing these types of experiences, like trying to keep a handle on like what's being done with like their brand and like the name is
Yes.
going to become more and
Yeah.
more important because dupes are a thing within like merch, but then also you have these like bad experiences that people, talk about online,
Right.
that, you want to make sure people know that your thing is like the actual thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Shondaland's a unique use case here because they've been very strategic in they've collaborated with very established brands. So they've worked with Fever events. They collaborate closely with Netflix. They have a great partner in them, it sounds like. So they're very thoughtful in how if they're going to put the Shondaland property name on anything, it's going to be done very well. And so I think that they are a use case that people should look to of like, how do we go about doing this? And I think it is a matter of like okay, Taylor Swift is another perfect example.
Hmm
Any city you go to, there's a Taylor Swift karaoke night or like DJ night, whatever. That's not licensed, but when
hmm
it comes to something like this where it's a higher price ticket. It
hmm
is something that you're probably going to like really get dressed up and go all out for. Those feel like the next tier up, and those
Yeah.
feel a little bit more strategic, a little bit more deliberate. And they're usually like much they're offered less often, so
hmm
they're very rare. It's kind of a big splashy thing when they do come along. And it's for the super fans. It's not for the casual passerby who like casually likes it. It's for the people
Yep.
who are crazy about this show or this movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, very different levels of intensity for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it does remind me of like Disney though, right? Because like even
Yeah,
within that, they
it's
have like huge levels to their fandom, right?
absolutely.
Because you have like the
Absolutely.
cruises, the like different hotels, obviously the Disneyland and Disney World, and even within that, you have like tiers. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a huge example of like what's
Mhm.
working, right?
Yeah,
And it really goes to show that like people want to spend on the things that they care about. So it's like really
absolutely.
trying to find those channels of like what works for your particular, customer. Like, what is it
Mhm.
that they want from you, and like what makes sense, right? I like that the tie-in with Bridgerton and like the Regency balls and stuff, right? Because it's like you
Mhm.
don't really get that elsewhere, right? Um,
No, it's very
uh,
novel.
Exactly. I mean, you have like Renaissance fairs, which is, similar, right? People like to dress up
Yeah.
and they like to participate, and that becomes like its own community. But, trying to come up with those like unique angles that make sense, like for your brand. I think it also ties into another thing that I think is like really working well for brands these days, which is creating those types of experiences where it's like,
Mhm.
how can you get people to participate in like one-off events that like make them feel a little closer to like your brand or what you're trying to sell, right? Um, again with like the Marty Supreme thing was like that's I think what they're trying to do there, mainly because they're competing against two like tentpole films in like, during the holiday season, which is Wicked, which just
Mhm.
came out, and Avatar, which is coming out in December,
Oh,
the
man,
week
yeah.
before it comes out. And I think they realize that like most people are going to spend money on those films because like, well, everybody has to see those films, right? Those are part of the monoculture, right?
Yeah,
How do we make them come out for this, right? And that's like, let's create an
right.
experience. And I think that we see that in concerts, right? Where it's like, obviously everyone, it's, an easy yes to go to like a Taylor Swift concert, but what's going to make you go to that like smaller band, rock band
Mhm.
concert, right? And we've
Yeah.
given examples here of like, well, we had the All American Rejects start performing at gas stations and like, backyards,
Frat
because they're like,
parties, yeah.
yeah, but it's like, well, get people to come out to those type of events. So it's like, the fact that they're participating at like someone's house is like novel these days, right? Because like people don't
Yeah.
have house parties anymore, which is a whole other thing. But just the
RIP.
idea that like it centers around like, well, where do bands start? In the garage. Well, where are garages? Houses. Okay, let's have a house party, right? It's like it
Yeah.
makes sense. Like those are the steps it takes of like how things like make sense for people. And I think that that's what people like when they're able to make those ties of like what makes sense. They're more willing to like participate in it. And then
Yeah.
anything that like seems unique, they're willing to
Mhm.
spend, you know, upwards of like thousands of dollars in order to
Yeah. Of
participate, right?
course. Of
So
course.
yeah, what are those things that will get like your hardcore users to want to participate with your brand without it being cringe?
Yeah, true. Important factor there too.
Hmm.
Oof.
Awesome. So my next topic is kind of about this, just in terms of like merch and like sales and like what people want to spend their money on. So this week I saw that Shopify's president, Harley Finkelstein, um, posted a tweet to, ask merchants to drop their favorite stores and their favorite products for Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales, saying that like, oh, I usually, shop around this time of year. So he made it personal. He made it about himself. Like I'm looking for something to buy. Drop your links here. I always discover a few brands that I like purchase from. And I thought it was like a great way for like the president of Shopify to be promoting both Shopify, yes, but then also the brands that sell on Shopify. Um, it's like one of those things where it's like, we know that we're like a marketplace. We know that we bring a whole bunch of brands together. They're not going to get as much, spotlight as we can provide for them, which is like a huge thing I think that's happening right now in like the startup world. It's like, how do we give distribution to like the people that benefit from us? We saw that recently with like Andreessen Horowitz creating their like new
Mhm.
media, fellowship, and the whole idea there is like, how are they giving the spotlight to their, portfolio companies? Because like, the biggest thing that a lot of startups need right now is that distribution. Like, how do they get eyeballs? How do they get in front of their like target customer? So you kind of want to go up to like the biggest spotlight that you can shine. And here,
Mhm.
Shopify is doing that for these brands. And basically reinforcing Shopify's ecosystem value. The brands get free promotion. Shopify demonstrate that their platform is successful. Consumers get curated recommendations from like a trusted source, which is like another big thing that's happening right now, where it's like this whole idea of like, what is taste? Like,
Oh,
where does
yeah.
that come from? And I think a lot of it is like, we're headed to a place that we're going to have like people need curation more than ever, where it's like, I need someone that I trust to tell me like what I should buy and like what's in, what's not. Because there's so many things out there, that like, how do you hear about things otherwise, right? And I think that's
Right.
one thing here, like that I've been feeling, particularly around Black Friday and like Cyber Monday. It's like, I get so overwhelmed with so many brands selling me emails that I end up just having decision fatigue and not buying anything, because I'm just
Right.
like, ugh, I don't want to like have to sort through all these sales. But what attracted me to this was like, whoa, these are brand new brands that I probably never heard of. And sure enough, I go on to like, the thread, and I'm finding out all about these like brands that I've never seen, like didn't even know existed, but it's like actual makers and creators selling their products. Like I saw this mirror that's like custom built like for your house. I saw a couple of like, hats and like actual products that are like manufactured here. I think this also hits on another thing that's been happening since like the tariffs were announced, which is that more people are becoming a little bit more aware of buying products that are made in the USA, and like
Mm.
wanting to have that kind of like high quality of product that comes or that you think comes like from here, right? Like you still have to have some way of knowing that it's going to be like something unique, and that it is getting built here. But it just kind of touches on a bunch of things that I've just kind of been thinking about, and it attracted me like for it. It didn't even go viral necessarily. It's just that like there was a lot of engagement happening with like the tweet, because people were like sharing their own like brands, which I thought was cool. But then also you had people sharing brands that they have bought from, right? So it gave another
Mhm.
like layer of like, let me refer you to buy one of my favorite products, right? Like people need to
Mhm.
know about this, which I think is like a
Yeah.
great way of like getting people to share the brands that they love, which I don't think happens nearly enough as it should.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And as a content marketer, I see something like that and I think, oh, they've just crowdsourced a really valuable
Hmm.
blog post that they
Yeah.
can then put. And I don't know if they do that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But having it live natively on Twitter could be potentially like some people can't see it because they don't use it or they have thoughts and feelings about using Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. So I just feel like that's a really easy alley-oop to like turn it into a piece of content that's
Hmm.
either emailed out to users or like lives on their blog, and has all these great recommendations of things that their merchants are actively selling. And it's crowdsourced material. It's again giving the audience a voice, and I think that that is kind of
Hmm.
the red thread through this whole conversation
Yeah.
is take the megaphone down. Stop having
Hmm.
it be so one-sided from the brand part of the conversation and see what the audience has to says and then do something with it.
Yeah.
That's the part too.
Yes, I love that. I think something that you said really stood out to me, which is that people are discovering like what they feel is an authentic recommendation versus
Mhm.
getting an ad, right? I
Right.
think so many of us are just becoming inured to ads that we just kind of like, I know that when I'm on Instagram, I will just, scroll past as soon
Mhm.
as I see sponsored or ad or anything. I'm just like, ugh, I don't even care.
Yep.
Um, Even though Instagram has some of like the best ads based on like stuff that I might actually like, but this felt different because it was like he's not promoting Shopify. He's wanting other people to promote their own brands. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, yes, more people need to do that. And it's a unique way of like finding out, what's out there. And I think like in terms of thinking about it that way, where it's like, what is it that like marketers can do to promote themselves in a way that doesn't seem so obvious, right?
Right.
Like, whether that's like using customer stories to tell like your story, whether using your products to do that. Like what is there like a particular like product feature that like your customers use and love that like you don't really promote as much because it's not like the main feature. I've worked with a
Mhm.
couple of companies that have like realized that like, oh wait, our users are telling us about this feature that they love. We don't even pay attention to that one. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, but your users are, and like maybe your future users can, right? And just even thinking about when companies kind of discover that and realize that, oh, wait, maybe we should pay attention to that feature a little bit more, and then realize that they end up bringing a lot more leads because they're promoting specifically that feature that like their customers are telling you that they love, is
Mhm.
like a really interesting like thing to realize when you're like working with a company like that. But then also, how can you do it without being salesy, right? Like, can you find a way to just start raising your brand awareness. That's a thing that I've been thinking about more recently, because I feel like brand awareness a couple years ago was like not enough, right? We really want to know that like we're bringing in leads, that we're, people are actually converting, that it's not just like, oh, people are talking about us. I feel we're kind of going back to like, well, we want people to talk about us because nowadays people just aren't talking about, what they're buying, what they're purchasing, what they actually
Mhm.
love, like what companies are out there. Maybe it's, because like the type of products like the value has kind of gone down, right? Like I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of what I see with bigger brands like Nike, Adidas and stuff is that like the quality just isn't there anymore. So you see people wanting to actively look for smaller brands that are paying attention to like what consumers want, like whether that's because they use better um like materials, or whether they use like a better like production process, or the way that they manufacture is like more sustainable. Like people are starting to care a little bit more about like the things that they purchase, and certainly younger demographics, right? Like they want to know that like you are aligned with like their values. So I think that this is
Mhm.
like a new way to kind of like make you think, what can we do to like show our consumer that like we're thinking like them, and that we want them to know that they're important to us, and it's not just,
Mhm.
using a celebrity to sell their product.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not very novel at all. That's been done to death. So,
Mhm,
yeah, I love to see stuff like this. I think that kind of, again, talking about online recommendations, holiday season coming up, that kind of
mhm,
leads me nicely to my last little moment that I saw this past week, which is the fashion brand Miu Miu came out with this very interesting, interactive, very like tactile focused web experience, and it's got folders as you scroll. Like there are a lot of interactive elements, and I like this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's running in the opposite direction of like the AI slop of it all, right? Like it's very old school looking. It's just such a turning away from the quick, easy, flashy design that is AI right now. And that's not to say that that is bad or that people shouldn't be doing that, but for a luxury brand that's focused on quality and being handmade and being higher dollar and being more just touch, like one-to-one experience, that having the design reflect that, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm sure it wasn't cheap to have an experience like this drummed up, and it's not for every brand to do because it does take a lot of resources to create something like this. But I just thought that was a really strategic and thoughtful choice in a moment of cheap, fast production, really flashy graphics. It just felt almost lo-fi. It felt scrapbooky almost, and I found it very refreshing. And I'm very into brands. There's a lot of conversation right now about like art or commerce. How do we live at the intersection of both? And this was a vote for art, which I'm very, very into from brands right now because I'm not seeing a lot of that. So I wondered what your thoughts are on a choice like that.
yeah, I mean, this hits on what we've been talking about these last couple weeks with Apple designing their logo using glass and like light to
Mhm.
create the actual rainbow effect in the
Mhm.
logo that we see for Apple TV. Um, the choice for Barber to partner with Wallace and Gromit, that
Mhm.
created the stop action like claymation um, ad that took 2 years for them to create. So this whole idea of like craft and art versus like AI, because we recently talked about Coca-Cola saying that they're using AI to create their Christmas ad again, and then Disney saying that they're going to allow users to create AI slop basically for their
Mhm.
platform. So I think it's like definitely something that's happening right now where companies are kind of putting a stake in the ground, and I think it makes sense for Miu Miu to go on the side of craft, right? Because that's
Mhm.
what they're trying to portray is that their brand is like luxury, that it's craft work, that it takes time, that there's
Yeah.
thought behind it. And I think when brands are putting that behind their marketing efforts, it comes across as that for their product itself. It's a similar
Mhm.
thought that I had with like Barber, where now like it makes me think that it's like long lasting, that it's like meant to survive seasons, that it's not fast fashion that you're supposed to throw
Right.
away after like one use, or that it's not like trendy, something that you just, have for like the moment and throw away. It's like, no, this is a coat that you're going to purchase. It costs upwards of like, $500. And I think that more people are starting to look for that. I know I am, like
Yeah.
I don't just want to be buying, fast fashion. I want stuff that is going to last me longer. Especially for like luxury brands, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like, if that's what you're trying to like portray is that crafts work, then it makes a lot of sense. And I agree. It took a while for them to put this together. Like websites like this don't just like come about. So many fashion brands these days just kind of seem like, oh, here's our like product catalog and then just go and
Right.
buy, right? Like there's no like fun behind it. One of the other things that this reminds me of is we're gonna have a bonus episode about advent calendars. With like
Oh,
the whole idea of you're creating these like special moments to like ride the tide of like what people are talking about at the moment, right? And like the decision to go for like cheap products or like, products that like are larger, more long lasting, and that are actually going to feel like it was worth it to buy the advent
mhm.
calendar, right? And we've seen that the main one that we were talking about was Sephora because
Ah,
you know they've kind of gone down in quality, right? Like it used to be like you would buy it and it was like well worth it, right? And then versus Amazon, which just launched a really like fancy one with like the fancy Korean skincare that like,
okay.
you normally wouldn't get, or that like you don't know like which one to purchase, right? So I thought it
Mhm.
was like a new way of like Amazon being like, we're gonna focus on luxury, but then we're also gonna be curators, right? Like we're
Right.
gonna help you find the products that we endorse and that will make it easier for you to trust versus like just, throwing something together the way it seems that Sephora has started doing and not really thinking about like the consumer, but just trying to make the sale. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of brands need to start thinking about that. Like, are you actually creating packages or products or services that make sense for your consumer, or are you just trying to make a sale as quickly as possible and
Mhm.
not care about that churn that happens like later?
Right. Yeah. I think that's so true. Um, it's tricky, you know? And it takes a lot of forethought too. I think that that's the other big takeaway is that they clearly had been thinking about this and planning for it for many months, instead of scrambling at the last minute to throw this campaign together. So again, thoughtfulness,
Hmm.
artistry, craft, that's the ethos of their whole brand. That's why people buy luxury. So I just thought, oh, this tracks. This makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing that we were talking about last week with Mark Stenberg at Adweek was the whole idea that like AI is like the future. I mean, both of us kind of work with AI
Mhm.
tools. We like, help create content. We help do our jobs with AI. So we're not at least I'm not anti AI. That's
No,
not
no, no.
why we're having these conversations. It was more about like this idea that Mark said. It's like, should you be the first to be the
Mhm.
one doing it, or should you kind of like wait it out and be like the third and then kind of incorporate it in a way that like makes sense, right? And I think that
Yeah.
was what my initial like, you know, dislike of like the Disney AI announcement was that like, does it make sense for their brand when like they're also a huge brand that like goes after, people for using their IP, they're
Mhm.
like they've got lawyers on like speed dial to get stuff taken
Mhm.
down, but here they are saying like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to allow users to like use AI on our platform. I'm like, it doesn't like make sense. When on the other side, they're very like anti people using, their IP. So that's where I'm just like, brands need to start thinking about like what works for them or like what makes
Yeah.
sense. we talked previously about like remember when Duolingo announced that they're like, we're AI first, you know? And at the time, I remember us like talking about how, like, what does that mean? If you are doing it for like cost savings, are you then passing that on to like your
Mm,
user? Right. And I feel with like luxury brands, are you gonna pass that on to the user, you know? For
yeah.
Disney, are you gonna be passing on to the user? Because all I see is that the ticket prices to, like, you know, Disneyland and Disney World are going up. So, like, where's the consumer and, like, how you're thinking about your consumer coming out, you know, when you're having these, like, discussions? Or is it
Mhm.
not at all? You know?
Right. Yeah. And it's hard to say because we're not part of those conversations, but
Right.
it is, you wonder about what are the choices being made? What's the strategic thinking behind these choices? Yeah.
Mhm. Cool. Okay, so let's go on to takeaways. Um, so in terms of the Hulu and Abbott Elementary ad, I think what really worked here for me was this new idea of getting the you know, promoting your product or like the TV show in a novel way,
Hmm.
which is through the Apple, and really thinking about how it incorporates everything that you'd already been talking about, like the earlier season promo that like was of like the kids throwing apples at the teachers. Now it's like you're using the actual apples to promote the TV show. It's guaranteed eyeballs and it's like built in shareability where people want to share it because it's novel and it's unique. So what are those things that you as a marketer can do for your brand to incorporate into a cultural moment that's like already existing, that people like can recognize because it's like people already put together teachers and apples together.
Yeah. Other than that, I just think it's a really smart and strategic way to, again, the first person advantage of what's a novel concept here. Where's somebody going about their normal everyday life, and we can encounter them with this kind of subtle but strategic marketing message. And in this case, it was at the grocery store in the apple aisle. Again, a lot of associations here during back to school season. So just kind of the insider wink of make people feel like they're part of the cool kids club. And if you know, you know. I feel
Hmm.
like that's a home run if you can make an audience member feel that way. So takeaways for the Elle fanning. The big thing here for me is just fandom, I think, is the next movement of how do we market strategically to super fans? Because those are the people who are going to be the loudest on social media. They're going to buy the merchandise. They're going to go to the experience. So giving fans a voice in whether it's casting a movie or what should our new product line be associated with this property we have on Netflix? Giving people a voice through social media, through focus groups, through in person experiences, I think is the move for brands moving forward.
Yeah, I think for me it was that listening to the audience isn't just good PR because they are going to promote it and pay attention to you, but it's a new
Hmm.
way for you to think about how you're developing your product or casting movies,
Yeah.
especially if you know that by choosing the person that you know they've fan casted makes sense for your brand. Because that means they're already going to give you like their money and their loyalty because you're paying attention to them. So
Right.
having that two-way conversation with them and actually paying attention to them and making them feel heard is going to
Hmm.
make a difference for whatever you're promoting in the future. A bit of caution is to not go too far into it. You
Right.
know, there have been companies who have listened too hard to their loudest users and have pivoted and it not working out because that isn't what the majority wanted
Hmm.
of like the product. So this worked out because the casting really works. But I could see it, you know, not working at some point in the future. So that's something to think about there. Like, what are the downsides to like, you know, maybe promoting somebody for just because they have a lot of Instagram followers, but they're not a good
Right.
actor, you know? I could see
Right.
that being like a thing that bites them in the butt in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think authenticity is a huge part of that
Hmm.
conversation too. What feels right for the brand? What feels like not just a cash grab? That's a big part of it
Yeah.
as well.
definitely. And then for the Shopify president thread, two things stood out there. One is that using your executives, your founders to promote your consumers, here the merchants and like their products is a really big win for your own platform because it showcases your platform in a different way. And it's not just like use Shopify. It's like, no, here are all these like amazing products that are on the Shopify platform and that sell with us that you can buy. And it allows your merchants to tell their own story on your tweet and then get distribution from that, right?
Mm.
The second point is that it makes it feel more like I'm actually getting a recommendation from an actual person as opposed to getting
Mhm.
an ad, which is like, even if like Shopify were to like then, give me ads for like these people, I'd be less willing to pay attention because it seems like now it's coming from the brand as opposed to this,
Right.
like people are promoting themselves or promoting other brands that they love and sharing them in a more organic way as opposed to everything just being in ads and like salesy. And this is such a key thing right now before Black Friday and Cyber Monday because people are
Mhm.
actually paying attention and are wanting to pay for things. They just don't know where to start.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a great play too, as I think I have seen you talk about this before, but giving the people who work at the organization who are in leadership positions a chance to act more as a content creator and it's like it's community fostering,
Yeah.
really. At the end of the day, it's tell us what you think. And again, that's the common thread through all of this is put a face to the brand, put a name, put a human being in this world of increasingly AI everything.
Hmm.
Add a human touch, add some humanity. This was a really nice way to do that.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
that's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that brings us also to, speaking of AI, just the Miu Miu experience that I saw that was very scrapbooky, very art forward. Again, I think whatever the ethos is of your brand, your marketing needs to reflect that. And even though there are tools that make creating ads super easy, and I think there is a time and a place for that, if the ethos of your brand is luxury, artisan, thoughtfulness, your ads need to reflect that too. And this was a really good example of that. And I think brands should be thinking strategically because it does require planning and time and energy and money. How do we do this while moving forward?
Yeah. One thing that this reminds me of is the whole idea that make stuff unscalable, right?
Yes, yeah.
This is not scalable and it's
It's
not,
not.
for every brand, right? But what, most of us are seeing right now online is that everything looks the same. Why is that?
Yes.
Because more people are using AI. Okay.
Mhm,
And what does AI do? Is it brings you towards, the monoculture of what everybody else is already doing. This
mhm,
stands out so much because it's like it's a flex from them saying like, yeah,
right,
we are building this, this is what we care about. It's artisanal, it's luxury, and we're reflecting that in our new website. If
mhm,
that's something that you want to portray to like your brand, if that's how you want to position yourself, then this is a thing that you should think about. How can you
mhm,
be unscalable in a, arena where everybody is doing the same thing? I mean,
right,
we saw that with animations that were being,
mhm,
put on like websites. We're seeing it now with like enterprise, software and like SaaS products where like the websites just look white with like text. And
right,
this was like a way of, really calling to like your target user. It was like pink, it was like, it had fabrics, and it was just
mhm,
like really pretty. And I think that that's going to bring more people to them than if they had like, done an ad campaign on like Vogue or something, which they're probably
mhm.
doing, but this is going to bring more
Yeah,
attention
there's a
to
time and a
them.
place for all that, but it's kind of like the apple in the grocery store.
Hmm.
It's unexpected and you
Yeah.
stumble upon it and you're like, "Oh, this was very thoughtful. How delightful."
Yeah.
I love those moments.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that also is another point there where because I think you mentioned earlier with it being like the first person, right? They're getting press hits from this and like
Mhm.
going viral on social media because it is new, because it is novel.
Yeah.
And so sometimes knowing that you are going to do something that's unique and different should be enough of a reason to do it, because then you'll get that follow-up of like the snowball effect of people paying attention because it
Yeah,
does
the
stand
earned
out
media, all
as
of
being
it.
different.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So something to think about there. For startups, we kind of mentioned that with like
Mhm.
everybody jumping in on the lunch video. Maybe you shouldn't anymore. Maybe now's the time to think about how, or flipping it, how can your launch video be so different that it seems as if it's novel?
Yeah. Yeah, agree.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Kaleigh.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you?
I am on Twitter, X, whatever you feel like calling it. My username there is Kaleigh F. My first name is very hard to spell, so you'll have to look at the text on that one. And then that's kind of it these days. I'm on LinkedIn. My website is kaleighmore.com. And yeah, that's kind of where I live online these days.
Awesome. And then you can follow me
Yeah.
at Sonia Bashez everywhere. And then the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube. And then Meme Team Podcasts on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.